Hello, welcome back to Crime on the Clarkfork, the true crime podcast where I tell you about big crimes that happen in small places, with each case having occurred in areas with populations of 15,000 or less. My name is Mackenzie Spence, and I am your host. Welcome to episode 13. The podcast is officially a year old. I started it, I believe, January of 2024. I almost said 2023. I don't know what year it is, apparently. And I am just excited for another year of this. I have been working on episodes way in advance, so I am really going to focus on getting these episodes out on the first Sunday of every month. And it is finally February. February is my favorite month because, my birthday is in February. And also, I just love the color pink. I love Valentine's Day candy. And with that, this episode is going to have a Valentine's Day theme. So, just foreshadowing of what's to come. January has been very busy. I had a family vacation, and then I went to Tennessee to visit my cousin. She was having her baby shower, and it was just so much fun to be able to see them. Unfortunately, right before we were supposed to fly out, quite literally the day before, I slipped on ice and hurt my knee pretty bad. So off to PT I went the following week, and we're strengthening that leg back up. It has snowed like 6 to 8 inches in the last week, so luckily there is some snow over the ice, which gives a little bit of grip, but I'm being very careful when I'm walking outside. It's also incredibly cold, so I'm just going to try and stay inside as much as humanly possible because I am not a winter snow sport person, so this snow does not excite me as much as it probably does for any of my listeners that like to ski or snowboard or snowshoe or cross-country ski. Anyways, with all of that being said, I am so excited it's February. Again, it's my birthday month, and I remember one year for my birthday, my mom had asked me what theme I wanted, and I told her that I wanted it to be hearts. And to me, I was so excited because my mom was like, yeah, we can totally do that. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized she was probably so excited that that was my theme because my birthday is the day after Valentine's Day, and everything goes on huge clearance the day after Valentine's Day. All the Valentine's Day stuff, all the heart-themed things. So that was just one of my memories that I have from growing up, is having a heart-themed birthday party, and I'm sure it was an easy pull-off for my mom to get those decorations. So, anyways, again, this episode on the Valentine's Day theme, we are heading to the East Coast of the United States, to West Virginia, and I'm just going to get right into it. So, the sources for this episode are places.us.com, Ashley Treatment, Bluefield Daily Telegraph, Fox NKMSP, CBS News, 59 News, KDKA News, People.com, Facebook, KIRO7, People's Press, and Medium.com. Sky Gusty, West Virginia, 2019. Population, 3,858. It was a few weeks before Valentine's Day 2019 when 31-year-old Amanda Michelle Naylor McClure and her boyfriend John McGuire ran out of money. Both were living together in Minnesota at the time, but neither had steady employment, and both were heavy drug users, particularly meth. When they realized they didn't have any more money for drugs, Amanda decided that they would drive to West Virginia to her father's house. The two began making their way to West Virginia, but didn't make it far because their car broke down in Indiana. It was then that Larry McClure Sr. received a phone call from his estranged daughter, where she told him that her and John were having car troubles and were dope sick and would need a ride from Indiana to West Virginia. So, for those that are unaware of what dope sick means, it is a term that's used when someone is experiencing withdrawal symptoms, generally from opiates such as hydrocodone or oxycodone, but can also be used when experiencing withdrawal from heroin or methamphetamine. So, Larry and his other estranged daughter, 32-year-old Anna Marie Chowdhury, drove to Indiana to pick up the couple before promptly returning to Skygusty, which is where Larry lived. This is where the couple stayed for the coming days, and it is unclear as to why Amanda didn't reach out to her adoptive parents for help instead of the father that she had been estranged from for the majority of her life, but some assumed that she was ashamed of her drug addiction and that they would force her to quit. And at this point in her life, she had already been in trouble with the law and had a 32-page rap sheet that was completely full of drug-related charges. So the four made it to Skygusty, and while the couple was staying with Larry, they all went to Virginia to purchase items so they could cook some meth back in their Skygusty home. Unfortunately for them, they didn't have an exact recipe to make meth, and the batch ended up not crystallizing. So they determined that it was simply a bad batch and poured the concoction into glass jars that Larry had around his house. After this, they went out and bought some proper meth so they could get their fix. According to Larry, everything was going really well with the couple, as well as with his other daughter Anna staying at his place, as they were practically continuously high on meth during this time. That is, until around day 10 when things soured. Now, there are a few different stories about whose idea it was to initially kill John. Larry states that Amanda came to him while he was sitting on his porch and told him that she needed to kill John. She gave him a list of things that she would need, including some rope, and it seems that Larry didn't question his daughter very much about the reason why she wanted her boyfriend dead, but it did come to light that John had had an affair with her sister Anna, which produced a child, and Amanda was not aware of this until around this time. It seemed that both Anna and Amanda wanted John dead. But, according to Amanda, Larry was the one that wanted John dead, and he was the ringleader of the operation. According to Amanda, during a meth-induced high a few days prior, John had told her that he loved her and that he wanted to marry her. Larry heard this, and it led him into a quiet rage, during which he would bring Amanda off into the woods near his house and talk to her alone, but it's unclear what the two talked about during this time, although many believe that Larry was planting ideas in her head while she was high on meth in order to induce paranoia into her relationship with John. Now, just to back up a little bit and talk about the history between Larry, Anna, and Amanda. Larry had been estranged from both Anna and Amanda for most of their life, as he spent most of their younger years behind bars. He served 17 and a half years for abusing a family member between the ages of 6 and 12, which was charged as first-degree sexual assault. From 1998 to 2015 or 2016, I couldn't get an exact year, but Larry was behind bars during that time. While the victim in this case was not named to the public, Amanda was 9 years old at the time and Anna was 10, which both ages fall into the charges that Larry was charged with for sexual assault. So that's kind of the background on why his daughters were estranged from him. Amanda was adopted into a family, and there's not a lot of information on what happened to Anna, but Amanda was adopted into a loving family that raised her as their own. So, after the trio agreed, all three of them agreed that they wanted John dead, Larry, Anna, and Amanda began concocting a way to kill John. On February 14th, 2019, Valentine's Day, John went out and returned to the Sky Gusty residence with a bottle of wine for the evening. Unfortunately, this was used against him in his murder. That evening, after dinner, and after the four partook in some methamphetamine, Larry asked John if he wanted to play a trust game. When John agreed, Larry tied his legs to a kitchen chair, and after a short while, the game stopped being fun for John, and he attempted to get out of the binding. But as he was struggling, a creepy grin spread across Larry's face, and Amanda hit him over the head with the empty wine bottle, knocking him unconscious. Amanda and Larry then tied him up further, binding his arms. When he regained consciousness, Amanda and Larry accused him of being a federal informant and began to torture him. The two asked him over and over again who he actually was, not accepting his answer of John McGuire. John even told them to look at his social security card in his wallet for evidence, but that simply wasn't enough for Larry and Amanda. After some torture and trying to get information out of John that simply wasn't true, Larry made Anna inject him with 2 vials of the failed batch of liquid methamphetamine, threatening her children if she didn't do what he said. She injected it directly into his carotid artery, sure that it would kill him and put him out of his misery, but it didn't. The 3 then tortured him for 3 full days before Larry and Amanda forced Anna to put a black garbage bag over his head and strangle him to death while Amanda stood on his back. Not long after they strangled him, they dug a shallow 3-foot grave behind the house. His cause of death was found to be strangulation. The shallow grave is where John laid for 6 days before the trio dug him up, paranoid that he was still alive. They then mutilated his body by driving stakes, wooden slats, and other garbage around the property to make sure that he was truly dead before dismembering his body. Once he was dismembered, he was reburied with lime. Interesting. I don't know what their motivation was for putting lime in the grave with him, other than maybe hoping it would throw cadaver dogs off of his scent if he were to ever be found. But they reburied him with lime in another shallow grave in the side yard of the Sky Gusty house. Not 1 month after John's murder, Amanda and Larry traveled to Tazewell County, Virginia, where they obtained a marriage license and married each other. Now, a daughter marrying their father is not legal in Virginia, but Amanda put another man's name as her biological father on the license, so the two were able to marry. They were wed on March 11th, 2019, by a United Methodist Church minister of the gospel. John was reported missing in June 2019 by Angela Erickson, who was the mother of his oldest 3 children. This would have been 4 months after his murder. The last thing that his family, his children, his ex-partners had heard about him was that he was heading on a road trip with Amanda. Their plan was to head south and visit John's mother in Alabama, but they obviously never made it, nor was that their plan. This was shortly after Valentine's Day 2019. The report was ultimately made because John had not made his annual call to his mother or Erickson on Mother's Day, and also didn't call his son to wish him a happy birthday on his 16th birthday. Erickson told the press that, and I quote, "I knew that something was wrong. There was just no way that he wouldn't have called myself, his mom, or even my mom for that matter. He just did that religiously. I honestly had thought the worst. I knew there was no way in the world he wouldn't have called his only son to wish him a happy birthday." End quote. The family ended up resorting to Facebook posts, attempting to find John, pleading for any information that they could get. The last posts that were made on John's Facebook page were rather ominous, but at the time, no one really thought much of it. They were all posted on February 15th, 2019, which, we all know, there's no way that John wrote and posted them, as he was tied up and being tortured by Larry, Anna, and Amanda. The posts read, and I quote, "Job completed. The Firefox is dead. Ha ha ha. The Mad Hatter." End quote. Another one that said, and I quote, "Ha ha 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 ha." End quote. And the final post reads, and I quote, "You are all bitches, just like Firefox, and you will all end up the same way. Ha 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 ha." End quote. And these can still be seen on his Facebook page. I ended up actually scrolling back on his page and noticed that the actual last post that he wrote was on January 15th, 2019, and it read, and I quote, "I need a ride to the city. My girl just got out of jail. If anyone could take me, to be greatly appreciated." End quote. While I didn't do too much of a deep dive, it didn't seem that he posted too much on Facebook. He mostly shared pictures, posted an occasional update, and posted selfies. And there are also many people who have heard this story and have commented on his posts, especially the 3 that were not posted by him on February 15th, 2019, but also quite a few commented on his final status update that was posted on January 15th, 2019, specifically talking about the irony of his girl being in jail and then murdering him a month later. Now, back to the story here. Larry and Amanda eventually moved to Kentucky as husband and wife, but on September 24th, 2019, Larry was brought in and jailed by the West Virginia State Police because he had failed to register as a sex offender at his new address. While he was being held, he told the authorities that he wanted to talk to someone about a murder. It was then that he confessed to the crime and told the police what had happened to John. The police immediately went to his old Skygusty residence, where they found the shallow grave and John's decomposing, cut-up body. By October 6th, 2019, both Amanda and Anna were arrested and charged for concealment of a dead body. Finally, on November 11th, 2019, Larry wrote a letter to court officials that outlined the murder, how he was involved, and he admitted to having an incestuous relationship with his daughter, Amanda. In the letter, he wrote, and I quote, "I just want it over. No trial, no taxpayers' money spent for a trial. It is hard for the state of West Virginia to fight against itself because I plead guilty/no contest. Thank you for your time in this matter." End quote. And then he signed it, Larry Paul McClure Sr. And this is when the court knew that they had enough to charge all 3, Larry, Anna, and Amanda with murder. In the courtroom during Larry's trial, he pled guilty with no contest. John's mother, Karen Smith, sat in the front pew during his hearing where they went over the horrendous crime that was committed by Larry and his 2 daughters. His defense attorney told the court that Larry would feel more comfortable and secure in a prison environment. He had already spent over 17 years incarcerated earlier in his life for those sexual assault charges and wanted no mercy for the charge he was going to get for this crime. While he knew he was going to end up in prison, he did request protective custody since both of his daughters were in gangs, and he thought that this would cause him trouble behind bars. And the 2 gangs that he states that his daughters were involved in are Hell's Angels and the Mongols. As Larry went into what he and his daughters did to John, John's mother had to leave the courtroom. When she returned, the testimony moved on to the psychological evaluation that Larry had completed. The main fact that came from this evaluation is that Larry did not seem at all remorseful for his complacency in the crime. When asked why, Larry responded, and I quote, "There's been 3 drug addicts taken off the street. There's been 3 murderers taken off the streets. I do believe in God. I believe everything happens for a reason, but I can't go back and take something back." End quote. He did mention that since before this happened, he had been estranged from his 2 daughters and didn't want to lose them for a second time. He went on to say that the entire murder was plotted by Amanda, his wife, by the way, and said that she was the female Charles Manson. After stating this, he turned to John's mother and apologized. And during the trial, it was also found that on top of Amanda and Larry simply being married, the 2 were also having sexual intercourse at the Sky Gusty residence. Before giving Larry his sentence, the judge spoke about the brutality of the crime that he had committed, reminding him that he and his daughters spent the better part of 3 days to kill John, then buried him, then dug him up just to dismember him and bury him again. During the 3 days, John suffered a terrible and slow death. The judge finished by stating that this was not a single violent crime, but a conscious decision that was made again and again and again over the course of 3 days. While Larry did not show any remorse for his part in the crime, he did leave the court with one final statement and request to the judge. He stated, and I quote, "I hope this same judgment comes when both of my daughters are sentenced. After his death, I watched them. It was like 2 raging dogs. I wouldn't trust them around nothing." End quote. He was sentenced to life without mercy, which he is serving today. In Amanda's sentencing hearing in October of 2021, she told the court that John was dead because of Larry. She stated that Larry didn't want anyone else near her. The murder occurred not long after John told Larry and Amanda that he was in love with Amanda and wanted to marry her. She went on to tell the court that John was a good man and that she wished she could bring him back. As I stated earlier, Amanda was estranged from her father for most of her life, and she was raised by adoptive parents. Her adoptive parents, Alan and Gwen Holm, pled for mercy for Amanda in the court, saying that she was under Larry's influence and that he had a huge impact on her actions. Amanda apologized to John's mother, who had Skyped into the hearing, and stated, and I quote, I have to look at myself every day. My family didn't raise me to be this way. I've not only hurt John's family, I've hurt my own family. End quote. The Holmes also apologized to Karen and stated, and I quote, I want to apologize on our behalf. I can't imagine what she is going through. End quote. John's mom told the court during this hearing that there had seemed to be no real motive for the killing that she could see. It had been found throughout the investigation that Amanda had stolen John's checkbook after she murdered him, and Larry stated that Amanda had been spending John's Social Security benefits, but to the court, that didn't seem to be enough of a motive, or a motive at all to kill him. Amanda then reiterated that Larry was the orchestrator of the crime, and that the motive was all his. Even with that being said, no motive was actually ever established in court. Amanda and Anna both pled guilty to a charge of second-degree murder where they faced 10 to 40 years in prison. After both of their sentencing hearings, they were both sentenced to the maximum of 40 years in prison. Even though Amanda asked for forgiveness for the murder of John, John's mother did not accept. She told the media that Amanda broke not only her heart, but also the heart of her 5 grandchildren that cry for their father every single night. She went on to say that the children are scared of Amanda, fearing that she will get out of prison and hurt them. Today, Larry, Amanda, and Anna are all serving the time in prison and will stay that way for many years. And that is the end of this case. As always, please give me 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as a review on Apple Podcasts. I'm always looking for cases to cover, so if you have a case suggestion, please visit the link in the show's Instagram page at Crime on the Clarkfork. It is a link tree, so you have to click on the link tree and then it'll have a button for you to submit a case. I also post pictures from the cases on that Instagram page, so if you go give that a quick follow, you can see pictures that I find from the cases that I cover. And then also let me know what your thoughts are on the cases in the comments on those pictures. Do you think Larry or Amanda was the mastermind behind the murder? Did Anna have more to do with the murder than she has let on? What did Larry say to Amanda during those private conversations just before John was murdered? I would love to hear your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will catch you next time with more big crime in small places.